The Secret of Misty Forest. Chapter 1. A Call from the Darkness. Dusk settled over the city like a heavy veil as Anna Schreiber gazed out the window of her small apartment. The lights of the metropolis flickered in the distance like distant stars, but her mind was elsewhere. Anna, a renowned journalist in her mid-30s with shoulder-length chestnut hair and clear blue eyes, was known for her insatiable thirst for truth. Since the mysterious disappearance of her father 10 years ago, also a journalist, she had made it her life's mission to uncover unsolved mysteries. Lately, however, she felt an inner emptiness. The usual headlines about politics and economics no longer fulfilled her, and she longed for a story of true significance, one that would make her heart race and illuminate the shadows of her past. One rainy evening, as the wind lashed against the windows and rain fell in torrents, she received an anonymous email. The subject line simply read, "Misty Forest needs you." Curiously, she opened the message and read, "Dear Ms. Schreiber, dark secrets lie over the village of Misty Forest. Unexplainable occurrences, whispering shadows, and vanished souls. No one dares to seek the truth. We need someone like you. Come before it's too late." No signature, no further information. Anna's heart beat faster. Misty Forest. The name sounded familiar, as if she had heard it before. She searched her files and found an old newspaper clipping about the disappearance of several people in a remote mountain region. Her instinct told her that a story was hidden here, one worth telling. Chapter 2. The Journey into the Unknown. The next morning, Anna packed her camera, notebooks, and essential luggage. She informed her editorial office that she would be traveling for a few days without revealing exact details. Something about the anonymity of the message made her cautious. The drive to the remote village took several hours. The roads became narrower, the landscape wilder. Dense forests stretched on both sides, and swathes of mist drifted over the mountains as if trying to conceal the place's secrets. As her car took one last curve, the view opened up to Misty Forest. The village lay nestled in a valley, surrounded by tall pines and a dense fog that seemed like a living entity. The sun didn't seem to penetrate here, and an oppressive atmosphere settled over Anna's mood. She parked her car at the village entrance next to a weathered sign that barely read, "Welcome to Misty Forest." A cold gust of wind made her shiver, even though it wasn't particularly cold. She straightened her shoulders and set off. Chapter 3. Strange Gazes. The streets of Misty Forest were paved with cobblestones that gleamed wet under her footsteps. The houses looked old and abandoned, with closed shutters and doors that seemed not to have been opened in years. Yet here and there she noticed movements behind the windows, shadows that quickly retreated as she passed by. A group of children played in the village square, but when Anna approached, they fell silent and stared at her with large, expressionless eyes. A little boy pointed his finger at her before an older woman appeared and hastily pulled the children into the house. An unpleasant feeling crept over Anna. She had often been in remote villages, but the hostility, or perhaps the fear, that met her here was different. She reached the inn, the Misty Crow, the only one in the village. The building was made of dark wood, the windows covered with heavy curtains. Above the door hung a sign depicting a black crow diving into mist. As she entered, she was greeted by a dim light. The tavern was sparsely occupied. A few men sat at tables, speaking softly to each other and falling silent when they noticed Anna. The innkeeper, a tall man with a grey beard and piercing eyes, greeted her with a curt nod. "What can I do for you?" he asked in a rough voice. "I need a room for a few nights," Anna replied, trying to appear friendly. He eyed her suspiciously. "We don't get many visitors here. I'm a journalist interested in local stories and legends," she explained. A nervous twitch crossed his face. "There's nothing here for you. Maybe you should move on." Anna held his gaze. "I'd like to stay anyway." He shrugged. "As you wish. Room number 3, upstairs on the right. Dinner is at 7. Chapter 4. Voices in the Mist. After depositing her sparse luggage in the room, Anna decided to take a walk to get to know the village better. The mist had thickened, making it hard to see what lay ahead. As she walked through the deserted streets, she heard faint voices seeming to come from the mist. She couldn't understand the words, but they felt unnatural and alien. A shiver ran down her spine. Suddenly, she stood before an old church. The doors were locked, but the massive wooden doors were adorned with strange symbols she had never seen before. Circles, intertwined lines, and eyes that stared at her expressionlessly. "You shouldn't be here," said a voice behind her. Startled, she turned and saw a young man about her age, with dark hair and intense green eyes. "Sorry, I didn't mean to disturb," she replied. "The church is closed," he said curtly. "I'm Anna, and you are?" "Elias," he answered hesitantly. "What are you looking for in Misty Forest?" "I've heard of strange occurrences here and wanted to learn more about them." Elias glanced around nervously. "This is no place for strangers. You should leave." "Please, I just want to understand what's going on here. Maybe you can help me." He hesitated, then nodded slightly. "Meet me tonight after dark at the edge of the forest." Before she could reply, he had already vanished into the mist. Chapter 5. The Forbidden Book. Back at the inn, Anna prepared for the meeting. She went through her notes and wondered what Elias wanted to tell her. Dinner was a silent affair. The few guests cast furtive glances at her, and the innkeeper watched her out of the corner of his eye. After the meal, she returned to her room. On her bed lay an old book she hadn't placed there. It was bound in leather and without a title. She opened it and found handwritten pages with notes, drawings, and symbols, the same ones she had seen on the church door. A note fell out. "You need to know what you're getting into. Trust no one." Her heart raced. Who had placed the book in her room? Was it a warning or a cry for help? Chapter 6. Meeting at the Forest Edge. As night fell, Anna sneaked out of the inn and made her way to the forest edge. The mist was denser than ever, and the trees looked like dark figures stretching their gnarled arms toward her. Elias was already waiting. His face was pale, and his eyes looked worried. "Thank you for coming," he said softly. "You gave me the book, didn't you?" she asked. He nodded. "It belonged to my grandfather. He tried to reveal the truth, but they silenced him." "Who are they?" Anna pressed. "The village elders. They practice ancient rituals to summon something." "Something? What do you mean?" Elias swallowed hard. "A demon, a spirit that rules the forest. They believe he grants them power and protection, but he demands sacrifices." Anna's mind raced. "Is that why people have disappeared?" "Yes," he whispered. "My brother was one of their victims." Chapter 7. The Legend of Misty Forest. Elias led her deeper into the forest to a clearing where an old stone circle stood. In the center was an altar engraved with symbols. "This is where they conduct the rituals," he explained. "They sacrifice souls to appease the demon." Anna took photos and noted everything. "Why did you show me this?" "Because I need help. I can't stop them alone, and you're the only one brave enough to seek the truth." Suddenly, they heard footsteps behind them. Whispering voices approached. "We have to go," hissed Elias. They ran back to the village, pursued by shadows that appeared and disappeared in the mist. When they reached the inn, Anna was gasping for breath. "What do we do now?" she asked. "We need evidence, and we have to rally the villagers to our side. Not everyone is part of this darkness." Chapter 8. Allies in Hiding. The next day, Anna met Martha in the village, a young woman with gentle features and sad eyes. She worked in the small shop and seemed nervous when Anna entered. "You're the journalist, aren't you?" Martha whispered. "Yes, do you know Elias?" Martha nodded. "He's a friend. I know what he's trying to do. Please, be careful. The elders are watching everything." "Why don't you help us?" Anna asked. "I'm scared," Martha admitted, "but I don't want to stay silent anymore. Too many have disappeared." She handed Anna an old key. "It opens the cellar beneath the church. You'll find what you're looking for there." Chapter 9. The Secret Under the Church. That night, Anna and Elias sneaked to the church. With trembling hands, Anna opened the heavy wooden door. The interior was dark and cold. The light of their flashlight flitted over dusty pews and faded paintings of saints whose eyes seemed to follow them. They found a trap door behind the altar. The key fit, and a steep staircase led down into the depths. The smell of mold and something unspeakable rose to meet them. Below, they found a large room, the walls covered with symbols and drawings of grotesque creatures. In the center stood a stone altar with dark stains visible. Blood. "This is the place of the sacrifices," Elias whispered, his voice choked. Anna took photos, but suddenly the light of her flashlight flickered. Shadows moved in the corners, though no one was there. An icy cold filled the room, and whispering began, a mix of incomprehensible words and distorted screams. "We have to get out of here!" Anna cried in panic. As they dashed up the stairs, the trapdoor slammed shut above them. They were trapped. Chapter 10. Confrontation with the Unknown. They were imprisoned in the darkness of the cellar. The whispering grew louder, and shadows formed into figures with glowing eyes. "Elias, what's happening?" Anna screamed. "It's the demon. They've summoned him." A deep voice echoed as if coming from the depths of the earth. "You have disturbed my rest. Your souls now belong to me." Anna felt an invisible force pulling at her, taking her breath away. Memories of her father flooded her, his smile, his disappearance, the emptiness he left behind. "We won't give up," Elias shouted, holding up an amulet he wore around his neck. It glowed with a warm light, and the shadows recoiled. "What is that?" Anna gasped. "A protective symbol from my family. It keeps evil at bay, but not for long." They desperately tried to find a way out. Finally, they discovered a ventilation shaft. With difficulty, they managed to open it and crawl out. Chapter 11. The Truth Comes to Light. Back in the village, they gathered Martha and some other villagers willing to stand against the elders. Together, they planned to stop the rituals and reveal the truth. But the elders were prepared. They had noticed something was amiss and called the villagers to a meeting in the marketplace. The chief elder, a gaunt man with ice-grey hair and piercing eyes named Heinrich, stepped before the crowd. "Dear residents of Misty Forest," he began in a booming voice, "there are strangers among us who wish to disturb our balance. They bring misfortune and doubt. We must not allow this." Anna stepped forward. "You have lied to the people and sacrificed innocent lives. It's time everyone knew the truth." A murmur went through the crowd. Some looked confused, others frightened. Heinrich laughed coldly. "You don't know what you're talking about. The village survives only through our sacrifices. The forest demands it." "No," Elias shouted. "The demon is your invention to wield power. You are the real monsters." Chapter 12. The Battle for Misty Forest. The tension in the marketplace reached its peak. The elders called upon their followers while Anna, Elias, Martha and their allies stood protectively before the villagers. Suddenly, the sky darkened and an unnatural storm broke loose. The mist swirled in wild patterns, and from the shadows emerged creatures, ghostly figures with distorted faces. "What have they done?" Martha screamed in panic. Heinrich raised his arms. "You wanted the truth? Here it is. The demon is real, and he will devour your souls." Chaos erupted. The villagers ran in all directions as the creatures pursued them. Anna felt despair rising within her, but she knew they had to act now. "Elias, the amulet!" she shouted. "It's not enough," he replied desperately. Then Anna remembered the book she had received. She pulled it out and frantically flipped through the pages. Finally, she found a summoning formula, a banishment spell to send the demon back. "We have to reverse the ritual," she said determinedly. "We can send him back." Chapter 13. The Final Ritual. Together with the brave villagers, they gathered at the stone circle in the forest. The creatures were close on their heels, and the elders tried to stop them. Anna began to read the words from the book aloud. Her voice was firm, even though she trembled inside. Elias and Martha stood beside her and repeated the words. A bright light shone from the center of the circle. The ground shook, and a bone-chilling scream filled the air. The shadow beings paused, as if pushed back by an invisible force. Heinrich and the elders screamed in fury and tried to disrupt the ritual, but the villagers stood against them. The light intensified, and finally the creatures dissolved into smoke. The storm subsided, and the mist began to clear. A deep rumbling sounded, then silence. Chapter 14. Peace Returns. The sun broke through the clouds, bathing the forest in a golden light it hadn't seen in years. The villagers stood speechless, as if seeing the light for the first time. Heinrich and the elders were deposed and arrested by authorities after Anna and Elias presented evidence of their crimes. It turned out they had used the fear of the demon for decades to secure their power and eliminate those who opposed them. The sacrifices had been real murders, disguised as supernatural events. Chapter 15. A New Beginning for Misty Forest. In the following weeks, Misty Forest began to change. People opened up, repaired their homes, and let light into their lives. Children laughed and played in the streets again, without fear of shadows. Elias became the leader of a new community based on trust and openness. Martha opened a small shop that attracted visitors, and the village began to welcome tourists drawn by the story. Anna wrote an extensive article that was published in national newspapers. Her story not only exposed the crimes of the elders, but also highlighted the power of courage and community. Chapter 16. The Search for Answers. Yet, despite the peace, Anna felt her own story was not over. The disappearance of her father still weighed heavily on her heart. "Elias, I need to ask you something," she said one day as they stood together at the forest's edge. "What is it?" "My father disappeared 10 years ago. He was also a journalist and researched strange events in this region. Do you think he might have been here?" Elias looked at her compassionately. "It's possible. Many have disappeared over the years. Perhaps we'll find answers in the elders' records." Together, they combed through the documents and came across the name Thomas Schreiber. Anna's heart skipped a beat. "He was here," she whispered. They found hints that her father had tried to uncover the truth, but was stopped by the elders. But there were also suggestions that he might have escaped. Chapter 17. The Last Clue. Driven by new hope, Anna continued the search. She followed clues that led her to an isolated cabin deep in the forest. The cabin was old but inhabited. When she knocked on the door, a man with grey hair and tired eyes opened. For a moment, they stood silently facing each other. "Dad?" Anna whispered incredulously. "Anna! Is it really you?" Tears filled his eyes. They embraced, overwhelmed by emotion. He told her how he had escaped the elders, but couldn't return for fear of putting her in danger. Chapter 18. Closure and New Beginnings. With her father by her side, Anna returned to Misty Forest. The villagers welcomed him warmly, and Elias was happy for her. "You not only helped us, but also found your own story," he said with a smile. "I couldn't have done it without you," she replied gratefully. The sun rose over Misty Forest, and for the first time in a long while, Anna felt complete. The shadows of her past had faded, and before her lay a future full of possibilities.